Hi everybody. Welcome back. I'm glad you're here. It's another sunny, bright, beautiful day. This might be our last show from Simple because the weather is really getting it's just time to be outside. It's just time to be a doer. So I say usually now from April, late March, early April till Thanksgiving, I'm just a doer and a field adjustment person, adjusting based on what the day is creating opportunity for. So it's a busy time. And then the nice thing is from Thanksgiving to early March, I take more time. I can read, go to lectures. I really get it to kind of put more in perspective what I accomplished through that year and how I can build off of what my future is asking from me. And I tell you, when you hit 70, that's always a good question, is what is your future asking from you? So I think it's a good question to ask even when you're 20. What's your future asking from you? And what are you going to create for yourself to carry you into who you're going to be? So I always think that's a good way to start and continue through life. So what I thought we'd do today, if you go back, I think it was last year, I did a show on designing a Mesic prairie. I've had requests to, Roy, you do a lot of designs using durable perennials, and durable means they come back every year, and and their perennials I start with that respect their space too. It's not putting in thugs and bullies that reseed and take over aggressively. So when I thought I'd do a Mesic prairie design, if you review that, I'm pretending it's actually 4 years later. 3 to 4 years later, and how I would enhance it, review it as I walk through it, look at it as we're hoeing in the spring. What can I take out? What can I add to it to increase diversity? I think the more diversity you can add to it, but you have to keep composition. And it was back to the last show I did, I mentioned how Pete Outoff, who you all know, he always told me on some particular path, stretch your patterns out, Roy. And I had some questions about, what do you mean by stretching your patterns out? What does that mean? And I'm sorry I didn't explain it as much to you, but usually what it means is if you have a pattern, say you have two plants together, say you have Spiralis heterolepis and Allium cernuum. If you have those two together and maybe it's only 4 feet wide, and because of scale, there's another pattern quickly next to it, and the pattern looks like boom, 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 boom. They're just too small based on scale. So what Pete was referring to, if I take the Spiralis heterolepis and Allium cernuum, instead of being 3 feet wide or 4 feet wide, maybe in relationship to the scale of the planting, it needs to be 12 feet long. And your eye flows through that nicely instead of chop, 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 chop. So you have a flow, you create continuity with the flow along the edge, and you can take that stretched pattern into the garden and put two other patterns, even smaller ones, on the side of it. Everything doesn't have to be 6, 12, 10 feet long. Again, it's based on the scale of the garden. But if you have 1 or 2 patterns that keep your eye moving through the garden, then you can put smaller groups or even some small block plantings with that. So when you look at stretch your pattern out, you look at how do I stretch 1 pattern, 2 patterns, 4 patterns, 8 patterns out within your planting. But again, it's based on scale. You're planting 3,000 square feet, 2,000 square feet, 500 square feet. It's in relationship to the size of the garden. And I think, again, you'll see that on your grid paper or your paper when you're doing it, when you review it and say, what do I have here after you get your patterns? Like, you might erase something and say, boy, I really need to get this to go deeper into the garden, or I need it to go along the edge. As I'm walking by, I need more continuity with that pattern along the edge so it doesn't start, stop, start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. And that's why, again, reviewing is so important. And as I mentioned in the last show, after you do that, review it, all of a sudden, you're not using grid paper anymore. You're able to understand that, and it's just part of who you are with your composition, design, and your relationship to the plants you know. And then you're just doing it more intuitively than you are looking and reviewing it on the grid paper. And that comes through 3 words: Practice, practice, practice. And two other words, screwing up. It's okay to make mistakes in the garden because you correct what your perceived mistakes are, and that's called gardening. By gardening, you move this here, put that there, and then you learn why you did that and why it's not maybe a good move to make into the future. So you keep enhancing who you are and what you're becoming continuously. There's really no end to it. There's no, well, I think I know enough. You'll never know enough. And really, you start with the basics like I start sometimes. I don't know anything. I really don't know anything. And what I keep learning from the plants and from people I meet, I keep enhancing and adding kind of a better direction to where my future is. So let's look at the Mesic Prairie that we designed last year. And remember, we're pretending it's 3 years later. So this was the patterns that I came up with last year. And I used Silphium terebinthinaceum, Echinacea pallida, Coreopsis palmata, Echinacea purpurea, Parthenium integrifolium, Spiralis heterolepis with an S, Schizachyrium scoparium, Monarda bradburyana, Liatris scariosa, Astrolaevis, Geum triflorum, and Erigeron pucellis. That's quite a few plants for 300 square feet. But at the time we did it, it kind of fits together, it flowed together, because if you see this big S here, see that S? That's all Spiralis. See these open areas? That's the Spiralis flowing through. All this is Spiralis going through up here, coming back down here, and here. So you see the pattern here, it is too, this corner, this whole corner. That's Spiralis. So I got Spiralis, Spiralis flowing. And Spiralis, that's the support system. That's the ocean of nice soft texture grass, and you have your patterns then flowing through that ocean of grass. So when I looked what I had, what can I enhance it with? What can I add to this that will work with the patterns as they age, and what do I need to remove so I can add these plants to it? Because it might be dense and look well planted, but to add the diversity to it, I might have to take out some of the few plants to add that more diversity to it. But I waited long enough so I could assess it properly. And that's why once you design a garden and put it in, you don't have to be finished with it when year one. In fact, you don't ever have to be finished with it. You can enhance and add value to it for the life of the garden. And the other thing you can do is someone who sees the direction you're going, when they take it over, I had a number of gardens that I've designed, 10 or 12, that are taken over by gardeners who are very skilled gardeners. And after 3 or 4 years with them caring for it, nurturing it, and loving it, it's not my garden anymore. It belongs to them. They've enhanced it, they've added value, they've let certain plants come in, they've managed the plants that come in by removing the seedlings. They can identify the seedlings as they're germinating, so they hoe them out, because you have to hoe something out if in a vacant space. So really, those gardens aren't mine. I got them off, I think, to a healthy start, but the gardeners allowed and enhanced the diversity within it. And sometimes you could use the word, they allowed that to happen. They weren't as structured. No, we can't let this change. They were more fluid thinkers, and okay, that's okay if Asclepias syrica comes in. Well, that's okay, we can have a few over here and a few over here, but they have the awareness not to let it spread and take over the whole garden. So they know how to relate to the dynamics taking place, and that's cool. Because again, if I could be 24 again, I started coming to know plants when I turned 25. I started in '78 at the Natural Garden, and I didn't know a plant from a doorknob. I couldn't tell you a perennial from anything. I'm an outdoor ed teacher. But when I got there, there were 350 different perennials in the earth. And again, I dug them out of the ground, put them in a beer flat, and charged people 50 cents. And every plant showed me who they were and how they lived, because they were in the ground. They weren't in containers. So I was very lucky. I was very lucky, and plus I had too much fun. I have to say. People were actually paying me to do this. It was just like too much fun. So, well, let's get back to how I see enhancing this after 3 to 4 years. So, what I've already added, which I forgot to mention, I have this little dark area here, and I put it down in the corner. And at the time we did this, I added Allium cernuum, and that was last year. So I put groups of Allium cernuum in here, but that was added not the first year. We talked about in our last the show we did this, adding that the second year, because Allium cernuum seeds freely. So I wanted to let the plants get to be 1 year old before I put these little groups of Alliums in. And there's only 2 or 3 per circle. I'm not putting 10 or 12 in. There's 2 or 3 here, 2 or 3 here, just scattered through the garden. So as the plants continued to mature and the Alliums did seed in, you might not get a reseedling, and the Allium can pop through different plants and look actually pretty attractive. So the second year we didn't use a lot. We just used enough to get the momentum started. And again, as the plants aged, like the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th year, the Allium would then find an opportunistic way to fit in, but they wouldn't have as much of an advantage if I put them in the first year. Okay, so I had the Allium in here the second year. So now let's say it's year 4. I have, these are my enhancement plants. I have Solido speciosa, Carex brevior, and here's something that really I don't see in any native plant catalogs, because sometimes we get limited by what we grow, and the limitation comes from a lot of growers don't know how to grow something, and when they do grow certain things, a lot of people don't know how to use it. And so if you don't know how to use it, no one's going to grow it because no one's going to sell it. So I grow Agrostis hymelis. Now I'm not telling you I have the perfect way to use Agrostis hymelis. It's a modestly short-lived, but can be perennial, but not continuously. If the soil gets too wet, it can die off. But the thing about Agrostis hymelis, it seeds freely. And because it seeds freely, I never plant it the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd year in the garden. I wait till the plants all mature, get about 4 years old, and that way they have identified their space to live. And when I use Agrostis hymelis, I just put a few in because I know they're going to reseed and become opportunistic, but seed in a limited way because there's limited space available for them to be opportunistic. So if you look up Agrostis hymelis online or look it up in the book, it's a very beautiful flower. It blooms in late June, and it looks like a large white panicles. It's very attractive. And what I would do with the Agrostis, not Agrostis, I'm sorry, Agrostis, is I use the number 6 to identify it in the grid. I might put 1 here. I'm not putting a lot in because of their reseeding capability. So I might put 1 here, and that's with the Coreopsis palmata right here. And I might put 1 here with the, and I might put 1 over here, and maybe 1 right here with Echinacea. So I got 4 or 5. So the first year you won't see much of it. You'll just see puffs of white. But 3 to 4 years after it's planted, you'll see it coming up in different locations, again, wherever it has the opportunity to come up. But the nice thing about it, where it comes up, seeding in those small open spaces, you won't have weed competition. And it actually looks very beautiful with those white clouds of flowers growing in between the perennials, the native Mesic prairie plants as they emerge. Because again, this won't flower till late June, mid to late June. And by that time, the warm season native plants are anywhere from 6 inches to 12 inches tall. The Coreopsis palmata will be in bloom then. So with the palmata in bloom being maybe 24, 30 inches tall, it looks beautiful with the Agrostis hymelis. So that is one enhancement. Again, look it up. Don't overuse it. Don't use it too early because it'll seed everywhere. Wait till your plants are mature and use it for filler plants. And this summer, we'll do a YouTube. I'll show you where we have it at Northwind and where I'm placing it. In some places, I just scattered seed because Northwind, that's the best thing ever happened is Stephen, Colleen, and I starting that nursery. It's my laboratory to learn, so I can screw up everything there. And then I fix it and change it before I bring it out into gardens I create for other people. But what I'm always looking for are ways to fill spaces with plants so I can outcompete weed population. And then so these plants fill in well with the maturing perennials, native plants that we're using. Okay. The next one I'm putting in is Desmodium Cidence. It gets around, it gets almost 36, 40 inches tall, maybe a little taller. It has beautiful arching, soft pink flowers. It looks like little pink flies when it flowers, floating in the air. It's a very attractive plant, but it's a big plant. It gets tall, but it's nice to come up through things and arch over slightly. So I used the number 5 for Desmodium Cidence. So I'm looking through here, where can I fit that in? And I'm not looking at the garden. I would be looking at the garden, putting flags in. If this was a real garden at the grid, since it's 4 years old, I walk through with pin flags, whatever color you buy. And pin flags are about this tall with a nice plastic flag. And I put pin flags and I write on the flag who's going in these particular places so that we can read the flag and put the plants in. So I'd put a pin flag for the Desmodium here with the Echinacea pallida and with the Echinacea purpurea. I think I would put one here and one here. So I'd put 2 here. And that may mean when I put the pin flag in, I have to remove 1 or 2 Sporobolus heterolepis, the prairie dropseed, because they've filled in there. I dig 2 out. I'll put in 2 Desmodium, and I might put 3 in and put them almost pot to pot. And people would say, well, Roy, why would you put them pot to pot? Because I need scale. I need that grouping to be as big as the plants that are 4 years old. And that way, when I put them pot to pot, they have the strength to compete with the plants that are there, especially the Sporobolus foliage that might be old enough now to cover up that area and be about 30 inches wide by late June. So I would take 2 Sporobolus out, maybe put 3 of these in right here, dense together. And then, you know what? I think I've got Monarda Bradbury on here. No, here's the Coreopsis. So I might, behind the Coreopsis where the Sporobolus is, I might put 3 of them here too, because it looks great with the Sporobolus, that soft textured grass, the Desmodium coming up, arching over, and then the Coreopsis, the foliage, the beautiful foliage, and the flowers and the rusty seed heads look great together. So I've got it there, here. I don't want anything up here. See how busy I am with architectural plants and forbs right here? I don't really want too much more there. This is more open with the prairie, the Sporobolus here. So I might put here. Do I need another? You know what? I think I'm going to put right here with the in between the allium. I'll put 2 here. So I got that mixed with the Echinacea pallida, and it's mixed with what else? Erigeron pucellus. I can't do that. I take the eraser. We talked about this in the other show, reviewing. The Erigeron pucellus is too short. The Desmodium would be out of context there. It would be too big, and the Erigeron would be too short. So I would leave the Sporobolus there, and maybe I carry it over here, but I have it here, I have it here. I can't put it here, the allium's too short. I'm getting too busy over here. You know what? For now, that's all I need. I can't move it here. I've got Sporobolus with the Erigeron here, so I don't really have any place for it right now. And I can see how the 2 groupings look going into the future. I can always guard it up. I can enhance it. But I want to see how it looks, visually observe it. I don't want to put it in because I feel like it has to go in right now. I've got 2 nice groupings and I'll work with that for now. Now, Carex brevior is a sedge that grows in sun to shade, but it has a very nice texture. It has a sproulus-like foliage, very narrow foliage, but it greens up in May, where the sproulus is just emerging from its hummock. It develops into a mound, like a hummock, and it's just coming up. The sproulus would be about 3 inches tall. So at that time, the Carex brevior is actually starting to flower. So I want to accent green. I want a little more green in the garden for spring, so it has some place for the eye to go where things look alive, more alive for people. So I take Carex brevior, I have number 7. So I look, where do I have a lot of sproulus, so I think I'm going to put some Carex brevior here, and I don't want a lot. If you put too much in, when the Carex brevior is done flowering, it goes into vegetative growth. The whole plant falls over and flops. It looks like a deer slept on it. So you want to make sure where you're putting it, you put a few in to get that pop of green. You put too many in, it looks flat on the ground, and it loses its way of being attractive to people. But I do want that early green, and then in 3 weeks, the centers fill up with all new growth, and it's a beautiful arching plant. Looks grass-like plant. Beautiful texture. But you have 3 weeks, 2.5 to 3 weeks of it looking flat as it lays down. If it has something to lean into, that'll support it, and you won't see that flat open area. So that's why I only want to put 2 in. So I have the sproulus, the mounds of sproul, everything supporting the plant so it doesn't lean over. So I'll put 2 here. I think I'm going to put, what do I have here? Monarda? Yeah, I can put 2 here. I can put Echinacea pallida. Wow, good. I can put 2 here, right here. And again, I'm taking out some sproulus. So I got 2 here, 2 here. I think I'm going to put 2 right here within the sproulus. So I got 2, 4, 6. Yeah, right here. I'll put 2 here with the Allium cernuum and the Echinacea. So okay, I got 2 here. So I'm only got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I got 8 of them. But again, the 2 together give me that green. And I think I've got enough so you can see moments of rich green in the spring as the forbs are emerging with their different contrasting foliage. But I have nice soft mounds of green here, 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 and here. So I got 4 locations of it. But I didn't put in too many so it looks messy. If I put 5, 6, 7 in, they flop over and it's a distraction. The garden's looking good, emerging with all these textures, and you've got these sedges flopped over looking messy. So the idea is to avoid any distractions, because that's all people, like if I put a big mustard stain right here on my sweater, that's all people are going to see is this big mustard. It doesn't matter if this sweater came from handmade in Ireland. No one's going to care, because all they're going to look at is the mustard stain. And when you put distractions in the garden, people aren't going to see your creativity and beauty. They're going to see this big green area all flopped over. So it's always good to look at the garden from beginning to end and what creates something that causes a distraction so you don't see the beauty of the entire planting. And I'm sharing that with you because I've done it enough. I've created, that's when I first planted Carex brevior, Colleen, my business partner, she goes, Roy, did a cow sleep here in the garden? I put so much Carex brevior in, it looked like a cow had slept in the garden. It was completely flat. So I took out almost 75% of them, and I mixed in Semicifuga coming up through there. And when the Semicifuga, there's a new genus for it, Ectea. When the Semicifuga came up with those unfolding foliage, it looked like green hands coming out of the ground with that Carex in the spring, the brevior. So it didn't look like a cow slept on that anymore. It made you cry. It was so beautiful. And the foliage emerging held up, and those stems, that held up the Carex brevior so it wasn't flopping, laying on the ground. So it's partnerships. That's in life, that's how you get through life, creating partnerships with people of other forms of knowledge to create and get a finished way of being and doing. Okay. And my last one I'm going to enhance with is Solido speciosa. I really like, I'll give you a common name, you're going to be shocked. Showy goldenrod. Usually I don't use common names, but Solido speciosa, the flowers are beautifully more cone-shaped, very upright. But again, if you use Solido speciosa the day you put the garden in, buckle up. Solidagos, the majority of native Solidagos reseed the first year from seed. So if you put Solidagos in when all your little young plants are just discovering that they're in the earth and they're trying to establish and have a lifestyle, the Solidago is going to be sending children everywhere. So in 4 to 5 years, your garden is going to be overrun with goldenrods. So, and sometimes you don't even need to bring them in. They come in on the feet of birds. Birds might come in there and drop the seeds right to the ground. So Solido speciosa, the key is it's very beautiful architecturally, and it stays in a clump. It's not rhizomatous, so it's not going to wind its way through the garden and be difficult on the other plants in the garden because it's a clump-forming Solidago. But because it does reseed aggressively, again, I put it in 4 to 5 years later, and I take out something, and because I love that vertical look, I think you'll like that. And then you're conscientious of the seedlings. They are easier to identify with a wider leaf. You'll see a little rosette with a wide leaf. So once you come to know the seedlings, you can instantly hoe it out in the spring. And if you miss a chance one that gets taller, you can pull it out or dig it out and relocate it to some other part of the garden. So it's easy to identify too. That makes it something you can care for without a lot of trouble. But wait 4 years before you put them in, or you'll have so many seedlings you can't keep up with it. And they'll shade out all your other plants, and you'll end up with a planting of Solidago, the majority of it. So let's see where a good place to put some of this is. So I look over here in my busy area. I got a lot of forbs doing things in here, but yet I have nothing for later. I've got everything will be seed heads and textural and architectural pieces. So I think I'm going to come in here, and I've got the Echinacea purpurea and Echinacea pallida. The pallida, because it's vertical, gives me enough room. I'm going to put Solidago right here. I've used the number 8 for that. And I think I'm going to put another one, let's see, I think right in here I'm going to squeeze one more in here, in between. This is Eryngium yuccifolium and little blue stem. That'll look nice coming through the little blue stem with the red, kind of red burgundy foliage in the fall, and have those nice candelabras of Solidago. So I think, what do I have here? I got 2 here too. You know what? I think I want to put one maybe over here. And I have Echinacea pallida with more Coreopsis palmata. I'm going to put it in here. And I have this here, this here, this here. I might put one more right in here as I sweep upwards. This is all Spirobolus in here. And this is Prairie dock. Okay, I can't put it too close to the Prairie dock. The foliage is too big. The plant is dynamic by itself. I've only got 2 in here, I think. Or 3, there's 2 over here. So I think I'm going to put it in here, where there's Spirobolus. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I think for now that's all I need. I want to see how they seed in, and I want to see how they seed in at what rate, and then I want to see how I can care for that, if it's too much to care for, or the person caring for it, if they have the ability to understand the seedlings and if they can care. I don't want to overwhelm anybody yet, but I do want to get the element in for the fall color. And I know that the Solidago I'm putting in can be managed, especially because it's not rhizomatous. So those 4 plants, I think, will really enhance the the Mesic Prairie, adding more diversity, and I think also adding beauty aesthetically, and also add to the health of the soil by their deep penetrating roots, so we can build healthier soil. And most of the health isn't from the forbs, it's from the dense fibrous roots of grasses, the living and dying of grasses. They produce a tremendous amount of organic matter because they turn over their extensive fibrous root system every 3 years. The forbs don't do that as much that quickly, but the grasses are your soil builders for organic matter and water infiltration. So that prairie dropseed, little blue stem are really working hard to build healthy soil. Well, we've covered a lot, and I hope this helps you, and if you have any questions, let me know. And the next time we meet, I think we'll be outside looking at what's happening in spring, talking about some of the changes we're making in the gardens. And thanks a lot for hanging in there and sharing together what we're doing. Bye, everybody.